Hello and welcome back to the Chargers Check-In, and you have made it to the playoffs. If you're watching this video, you're probably a Chargers or Patriots fan, and congratulations, you still have a horse in the race. Most fan bases can't say that, so there's a lot to be excited about for both teams. I think both fan bases think that this is a pretty favorable matchup because they are so even, and in the AFC, you never know what is going to happen. Both teams are relatively strong on one side of the ball, and we'll get into the major storylines in just a moment. Right now, the Patriots are generally favored by most books, but the margin is slim enough that it is probably because they have that home field advantage, right? It's New England in January. Historically, they do pretty well there. Looking at the weather, it's supposed to be in the mid to high 30s around game time, so a little chillier because it's a night game, but the wind could also be a factor. That's something we'll have to look at on game day to see how it's going to feel. Obviously, the Patriots are very much used to playing in the cold, but Herbert and this offense have done pretty well in the cold that they've dealt with thus far. I think sometimes there's a reputation for all West Coast teams to struggle in the cold, and that just hasn't really been the case for the Chargers, but anything could happen. Keep in mind, just because I'm saying it's favorable doesn't mean I'm saying it's going to be easy. It's just that the Chargers have lost to both the Jaguars and the Texans this year, so yeah, they weren't likely to want either of those, and they weren't sure which one it was going to be going into this. The Chargers rested starters last week, so they should come in healthier. We'll get to all that in a moment. I just wanted to mention that members get exclusive access to content as well as all draft content about a week early most of the time, as well as my notes from game day. Right now we're having discussions about where Jesse Minter could end up next year, what it's going to look like in the AFC West with all these coordinators potentially gone, Raiders having a new head coach, so I would love to engage with you guys. Click join to become a member, and let's get into this matchup. This is, in my opinion, going to be the best AFC playoff game. It's two teams led by great coaches and great quarterbacks who both have a lot to prove in the postseason. You know, from the Chargers' perspective, like I said, this is the matchup you wanted. There's no easy matchups in the AFC, but at least they don't have the Texans' defensive front or, you know, Liam Cohen on offense, who historically has been really, really successful against Jesse Minter. This is the best you could hope for, and it's still going to be tough. But from the Patriots' perspective, you know, imagine you have a great season, you get the 2 seed, and you realize you have Jim Harbaugh to deal with in the cold. It's like Jim Harbaugh wants this weather to be cold. He's probably praying for snow. It's not going to happen, but you know, this is what he has built his team for. You know, great defense, great kicker, incredibly tough quarterback, 2 solid running backs, a lot of big men up front, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I feel pretty good about the weather not being a big factor in either team's game plan unless the precipitation changes, which is obviously possible. You know, I live in the Midwest. I know how quickly weather can change in the winter. So that'll be interesting. I'm recording this before the injury report comes out, so definitely check the description to see the official injury reports, but I'm going to give you a heads up on who you should pay attention to for both sides. So for the Chargers, Omarion, Hampton, Elijah Molden, Jamari Sawyer is the most important one on this list, and RJ Mickens, he's been out, but he's met with media, which suggests that he will be back for this game. They usually don't encourage players to meet with media if they don't think that they're going to be back. Elijah Molden and Omarion Hampton were both out in the last game just as rest. It's not clear if they would have played if this was a playoff game. My guess is they both would have, but Harbaugh obviously prioritizes health over anything else because, like we've talked about, the seeding really doesn't matter and can't really be predicted. So on the Patriots side, you have K'Lavon Chaisson. I think that's how you say that last name. I'm not sure. He's the outside linebacker, edge rusher who went down in the third quarter last week. He did return to the game. You know, he could go into next week feeling banged up. I do expect him to play. Missing last week was left guard Jared Wilson. He's the rookie. He had a concussion. Ben Brown will be in for him. Defensive tackle Khyiris Tonga had a foot injury. Edge Harold Landry with a knee injury, and linebacker Robert Spillane has been out for multiple weeks with an ankle injury. So those are all the names to look for on the injury report. Obviously, both teams have guys on IR and guys out for the season, but in terms of just this game, that's what we're looking at. All right, with injuries out of the way, let's talk about the major storylines of this game, and probably the number one storyline is you have the immovable object against the unstoppable force, right? You have the Chargers defense trying to stop Drake May and this Patriots offense, and arguably this is the best defense the Patriots offense has seen this year. Chargers are a very zone-heavy team. Patriots receivers tend to perform their best against zone, with the exception of Stefon Diggs and Demario Douglas, but as a unit overall, they seem to prefer zone. So it'll be interesting to see if this is one of the rare games where Jesse Minter changes it up a little bit. Stefon Diggs is the lead receiver. He has over 1,000 yards. He's their X-guy. Attacking zone defenses is a strong point of Mack Hollins, but he is on IR. He won't be back for this game. So that's going to change their game plan a little bit. Chargers fans will remember Hunter Henry former Charger tight end. He's a big red zone threat, so lots of red zone options. The Patriots tend to run a lot of 12 personnel, and the Chargers defense is generally really good against multiple tight end sets, so that's something to pay attention to. That's another example of strength on strength, and the Chargers defensive line is great at getting after the quarterback, and Drake Maye has been one of the most pressured and sacked quarterbacks this year, right up there with Herbert. Obviously, Herbert has had it much worse, but Drake Maye hasn't been having a great time behind his line either. Thule, Mack, Owe, they are a nasty trio, and Minter likes to turn up the blitzes against these younger quarterbacks who have a little less experience identifying simulated pressures, so that's something to look out for. And for me, the question is, with that in mind, can the Chargers stop the scramble? Because Drake Maye is great with his legs. We saw, against the Bills, I believe he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and one of them was on a designed run. So clearly Mike Vrabel is not afraid to have his quarterback get out there and take a few hits, because it's been very successful for them. And unfortunately, it's just something that the Chargers defense has struggled with. They've had a hard time once they flush quarterbacks out of the pocket from stopping them from turning that into positive yards. The good news is Odafe Owe has done a great job running down quarterbacks who are usually used to being faster than edge rushers, who are usually the bigger, stronger guys. Odafe Owe is quick and does generally a really good job of chasing down quarterbacks who are just trying to get to the sideline to wait for a receiver to get open. And I'm curious if Jesse Minter decides to have Deion Henley as a spy or put Derwin as a spy, or what his game plan is to lock down, especially up the middle, preventing Drake Maye from using his legs, which he is so good at doing. In terms of the Patriots' run game, their running backs are Travion Henderson. He's the second-round rookie out of Ohio State, one of the better running backs coming out of this draft. I like him a lot. And Ramondre Stevenson. And Stevenson, if you watched the game against the Dolphins, he really popped off. 7 carries, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns. Generally, he's been more of a short yardage back. He's not quite as fast, but he's good at turning short runs into a little bit more than what they're blocked up for. He can definitely keep the Patriots offense on schedule, and he's probably going to be the one who has to deal with the Chargers front between the tackles, which is really excellent on 3rd and short and goal line plays. And that's something they've been pretty consistent at. Even their backups succeeded really well against the Broncos in that regard. Occasionally, Stevenson can break a big one as well. He got a 56-yarder earlier this year. I'm not sure if that was last week. Travion Henderson, he's not as consistent as you'd like, but he is a threat in the passing game as a checkdown option. He's very fast, and because of that, he's always an explosive play threat. Even on basic runs up the middle, he has broken out for serious yards at different times, so he's going to test the Chargers defense's strength at swarming to the ball to back up the tackler, because he can break a tackle and turn it into a big run if you don't have guys right there to stop him before he can get his feet going again. Overall, the Chargers have improved their run defense in a serious way this season. It started out as something of a weakness, and, players on the interior of the line have really stepped up. I think of Deshaun Hand, Thayer Tart, Jamari Caldwell. On the outside, Khalil Mack consistently sets the tone. Tuli Tuipulotu struggled to set the edge earlier in the season, often misreading situations, but he has improved a lot in that regard as well. And, obviously he's a bigger edge rusher. He's harder to break a tackle with. The only way really, I think, to comfortably run through this line is through misdirection. Especially on the outside, because you're just, like I said, you're not going to find a size advantage against Thule. You're not going to have a size advantage against Mack, and so you're going to depend on getting this defense off balance and confused in order to get past them. The next major storyline is that it is Drake Maye's first postseason game. He's a very young quarterback. It's only his 2nd year, and he has a lot of strength. He is a fantastic quarterback. Designed quarterback runs and scrambles look great for him. The Bills absolutely crumbled against this, and if I were Vrabel, I would script those on almost every single drive because of how much the Chargers have struggled against that, because they like to put a lid on the defense. They like to run that too high shell and prevent big plays, and sometimes that pulls defenders away from the line. They run lighter boxes at one of the highest rates in the league. I think that the Patriots have an opportunity to maybe take advantage of that. Drake Maye is great at throwing deep passes accurately while protecting the football. He's really good at seeing the window for a pass and taking it without hesitating and not waiting for an easier throw, but he also doesn't force it most of the time, and he doesn't have to, because he knows he can scramble for yards if he needs to, which is a really lethal combination. I will say, he's not a perfect quarterback. No one is. Some of his movement is a little unnecessary. He sees ghosts at times. It can cause him to miss tight windows on extended plays when the routes have broken down. And even in that category, he has improved over the course of the season. There are times he leaves the pocket before routes have really formed, and it's not always necessary. We saw that against the Bills. So if the Chargers do use Deion Henley as a spy, that could come back to haunt Maye. But we have no reason to think that Maye will be a bad player under postseason pressure. I think most quarterbacks are good in that regard, because because they're under constant scrutiny by their organization, by their head coach, by their teammates, by the media. They're so used to being under pressure that I'm not sure it is that big of a difference in the postseason. They've played in primetime before, so they've had the eyes on them. For me, once you carry the burden of being a franchise quarterback, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you're going to continue to play at your level in the postseason, although there are quarterbacks who play significantly better in the postseason. To me, at least, it's a lot rarer to have someone who's really good in the regular season and then consistently falters in the postseason. So I'm not making too much of it's Drake May's first postseason game, just like I don't make much of, Justin Herbert hasn't done well in the postseason before. You only have a 2-game sample size. To me, that's not really a big deal either way. Chargers defense is one of the better ones that Drake May has played against. The defense gets pressure at a really high rate. Drake May does sometimes hold on to the ball for a long time, which is a pretty common mistake young quarterbacks make. Not a big deal. He's going to grow out of it as he gains trust in the team and the system, gets a better feel for the pace of the NFL. He does have that similar Justin Herbert quality where he can break out of a sack and then launch the ball down the field with remarkable accuracy. And so the explosive play potential is always there. And the Chargers defense, they really need to be beat with slow, methodical drives. They're really good at deep pass coverage, which is what the Minter system really emphasizes. So it's sort of a question of, with Drake May being good at turning negative plays into neutral and neutral plays into positive, is he the right fit to beat this defense? Drake May is also used to being under pressure and has largely succeeded anyways in terms of the Chargers having a good defensive line. So with the help of his very talented running backs, he has a good shot of getting into a good rhythm against this defense. So it's going to be a matter of how many times can the Chargers defense prevent touchdowns and hold them to field goals. But the last storyline of this game, and the one that Chargers fans I think are going to be the most focused on, is the fact that the Chargers offensive line is basically Zion Johnson and then just other assorted large men. Unfortunately, there are no other reliable players on the offensive line. Now, there's a chance that Jamaree Salyer comes back. I think a good chance. If he is able to play, the Chargers feel a lot better about Justin Herbert's blind side. But even then, Jamaree Salyer is still going to need help sometimes, and there's only so much help to go around in the form of chips, of double teams, extra men on the line. But right now, Jamaree Salyer is injured, just like both of the starting tackles that he is replacing. He may or may not be back. I think it makes a big difference one way or another. So look at the injury report, and I think what happens on Thursday is most likely to be the best indication one way or another. Overall, the Chargers offensive line, their pass block win rate is the worst in the league at 54%. And the problem with that is that their run blocking win rate is only 69%, which for context is the second worst in the league. So it's not like they can just run the ball and not give teams a chance to have an advantage by, using a quick game and run game, and you just can't get to Justin Herbert. It's just not possible, right? Well, you can't really do that when you can't depend on the run blocking either, unfortunately. If I'm the Patriots, honestly, I'm going to send the house at Herbert. I'm going to play heavier boxes than they normally do, and I'm going to dare the Chargers to have Herbert throw deep because he very, very rarely has the time to, because, as we've talked about, it is not offensive coordinator Greg Roman's strength. Dial up complex and effective deep passing game. It's just not his strength. The passing game overall has looked really weak this year, and sure, he's going to be saving some things for the postseason, but like we saw last year, you cannot just magically transform your problems in the postseason. You have to have a really good plan, and so that's going to be a big test for the Chargers. The Patriots should target their stunts at Mekhi Becton and the right side overall. When they bring extra pressure, they should bring it up the middle where Herbert tends to escape in the pocket. We've seen sometimes Herbert's good at escaping tackles, but sometimes he kind of walks into them by stepping up in the pocket instead of running backwards and then out like a lot of quarterbacks do. I know that Herbert is trying to cut his losses. He's trying to make sure that he doesn't lose 10 yards where he could have lost 6. But if I'm game planning against this, I'm not letting him run up the middle at all when I know that he's going to be under pressure because of blitz or delayed blitzes. I'd also give a few simulated pressures as well. The right side tends to be worse at passing off blocking responsibilities when they're not sure who they're blocking before the snap. And knowing all of this, the Chargers really need to dial up the quick game early on. They need to make blitzing feel useless in the first half, make spreading out the defense feel very necessary on the Patriots side, and get into a position to run the ball on second and third downs to avoid predictability. Greg Roman needs to get into his bag in the run game. He needs to give Hampton and Vidal every advantage running to the outside. This is Greg Roman's thing, right? This is what he does best. He is known for the run game. So he needs to be in his bag in that regard. And maybe Justin Herbert can carry the passing game, but no matter what, there needs to be a good Imagine Justin Herbert with a run game, right? That's what Greg Roman said. It's time to stop imagining, and what is that Jim Harbaugh said?
Put up or shut up, win or go home.
This is the week. Now, sometimes we've seen Greg Roman do the quick game. He did last week with Trey Lance out there. He did once or twice throughout the year, as in certain game plans really implemented it, but most of the time he really has not added it in. So it's possible that, now that it's the playoffs, with the stakes being Justin Herbert is our hope, we have to protect him. Maybe that changes. I'm not holding on to hope, but we will see. But if I'm the Patriots defense, I don't respect the quick game until Roman makes me respect the quick game. And so who knows? Maybe they have that mentality. Maybe the Chargers can take advantage of it. We will see. To protect Herbert, they need to run play action at a higher rate than they have been this year. That's one of the things that unfortunately changed from last year. Last year, Justin Herbert ran play action at one of the highest rates in the league, and he was one of the best at it. This year, not doing play action too much, and that's unfortunate because it really helps out your offensive line in the initial parts of the snap. If you do it often enough that people are convinced of it, and with the Chargers really threatening running backs, people absolutely have to respect the play action. And I want to see a lot of design touches for Ladd McConkey and Trey Khyiris, like we've talked about. Let them cook after the catch, put them in motion ahead of it. And, we've seen Trey Khyiris on a pop pass. We've seen him on those really shallow routes where he just gets an opportunity to make somebody miss or run into someone and get an extra few yards after the catch. And I want to see him get an opportunity in the postseason. So those are the storylines I'm looking at. I want to talk about a few potential X factors. The Patriots offensive line has not been great either, especially in pass protection. The Chargers defensive line, without their best starters, just put up a 40% pressure rate against the Broncos, who have a top 10 defensive line in the league, top 3 when healthy. They're a very well-coached unit, and going into last week, I don't think that is what we predicted in terms of what Bo Nix was going to have to deal with. But ultimately, the Chargers, both in this game and the last time they played the Broncos, were able to play that well. The Patriots do not have an offensive line the way that the Broncos do. If you were going to rank them, you'd probably put them between 15th and 20th. The Broncos, you'd put minimum top 10, realistically top 5. So the Chargers defensive players should be able to get home against them. They're below average in pass protection, like I said, with the exception of Michael Owenu, who is top 20 in that regard, but they as a unit have been leaky all year. Not to the level of the Chargers. I'm not trying to say that, what Justin Herbert deals with is the same as what Drake May deals with. That is absolutely not the case, unfortunately. But there's certainly a world in which Drake May is just not able to get comfortable, and they have to depend on their run game very heavily in the first half. Now, Travion Henderson has kind of saved them a few times in pass protection. He hasn't been perfect, and he's had some really big whiffs, but most of the time he's able to slow guys down, and they're going to be depending on that quite a bit. But the good news is the Chargers have a size advantage, and that's one of the biggest struggles of running backs trying to block is they tend to be shorter, they tend to be lighter, and it's not going to be fun trying to block Khalil Mack, trying to chip Thule. That's not going to be a fun or easy thing for the Patriots to do. Next thing I want to talk about is the Patriots defense. They look a little bit like the Chargers defense. They blitz at a low rate, very light boxes. They can be effective in a 4-3 front or a 3-4 front or with 5 guys down with their hand on the ground. I think a lot of Patriots fans are going into this game concerned about the defense, but make no mistake, they allow fewer points per game than the Chargers right now. And some of that is a reflection of the Chargers special teams unit more than their defensive unit because they're putting them in a bad position. Opposing teams consistently get a better field position than the Chargers do, and that's unfortunate, but that's something that the defense has to live with, right? Some of it is just that the Patriots are one of the highest scoring teams, and so their time of possession is in their favor. They're one of the better teams in terms of time of possession, so the defense is better rested. The defense doesn't have to do as much. They're not asked to carry the game, and when you're always playing from ahead, opposing teams are playing a little desperate. They become a little more predictable. They're forced to throw the ball downfield, and if it were up to defenses, you would just always pass the ball so that they know what you're going to do. They can afford to play lighter boxes because their opponents don't run the ball as much. So the defense does get a lot of help. Last thing on the Patriots, look, I know that the whole strength of schedule conversation is happening. There's the whole Drake May MVP conversation, and Matthew Stafford has had a significantly harder schedules, faced tougher defenses. And while I agree with the notion that the Chargers are probably the toughest defense that they've played, A season is a long time, and they have played a lot of NFL teams, and I think strength of schedule is a worthwhile metric for the first half of the season, but after that, there comes a point where it's like, look, the volume of wins is the volume of wins. You can't fake that after a certain point, so the idea that you shouldn't be afraid of the Patriots because of their strength of schedule, to me, that's kind of ridiculous. Maybe for the MVP conversation, you can look into that, but as someone who does not care about awards like that, yeah, I'm just not going to look at the Patriots and go, well, they've had it so easy. You could definitely argue that the Chargers only made it to the playoffs last year because they had it easy. So I'm not bothering with that conversation. I don't think Chargers fans should either, and I don't think that Patriots fans should be concerned about that either. The fact of the matter is these are two relatively evenly matched teams, and it is going to be a messy, chaotic game with a lot of pressure, a lot of scrambles, a lot of runs. I think there is a possibility for a lot of explosive run plays on both sides of the ball, and I think it's going to be a really fun game. You have two quarterbacks who in some ways are the images of each other, right? You have Justin Herbert, who's great at scrambling, great at breaking tackles, great at passing the ball accurately down the field, and overall in his career, he does a good job protecting the football. And you look at Drake May and you're like, yeah, that's Justin Herbert light. When he gets comfortable in the pocket, he's going to be right there with him as one of the most dependable and playmaking quarterbacks in the league. And I think this is a really exciting matchup. Jim Harbaugh and Mike Vrabel, you have the Michigan and Ohio State thing. Obviously that's, in the past, but still it's a really exciting time. You have two excellent quarterbacks, two excellent head coaches, and some really, really talented play calling for the Chargers on their defense and for the Patriots on their offense. This is going to be an awesome matchup. So that's that on the preview. For Chargers fans, I just wanted to mention, Chargers did pick up Ben Cleveland. He's the guard from Baltimore that there was a lot of buzz around, that Baltimore cut him, so someone's going to claim him off waivers. I don't think he wasn't claimed off waivers because if they did that, they would owe him like $250,000 just because of how his contract worked. But they end up picking him up anyway, and he's been signed to the practice squad. Make no mistake, this is not a starter. He is not going to be signed to replace Mekhi Becton or something. This is a backup, and if he really impresses, maybe there's a world in which if the Chargers, get to one of these later games, he can play at that point, but you can't, just like we saw when they traded for Trevor Penning, you can't just pick up a player and play him that week, not on the offensive line. And so I would be shocked if he plays at all in this game, but he's there as depth, and he's definitely improvement on the depth. They need it. They've been playing Foster Sorrell in very meaningful snaps. So yeah, they definitely needed to pick up someone here. And I also think they pick him up for the future. They can get a good look at him. Maybe he's worth signing in the future as a sort of swing guard option. And so why not? You just have a little bit more to work with there. Ultimately, I don't think that this is a significant move, and I don't think Chargers fans should worry too much. Either way, I am glad that they're still turning the lower half of the roster, mostly for the sake of getting a look at as many interior offensive line players as possible going into next year. But I'm not looking at this as, great, now we're going to see a different offensive line next game. I don't think we are. In terms of the offensive line, what we should be paying attention to is the injury report. What is Jamari Sawyer looking like? Like I said, this is going to be a chaotic game, a lot of off-schedule plays, similar quarterbacks, similar head coaches in a lot of ways, but both head coaches are proven winners, and Foxborough is a tough place to play. It is an awesome playoff environment, so I'm very much looking forward to this one. I hope you guys are too. I know that, for half of the fans watching this game, fans of the team, you're going to leave disappointed, and that's too bad, but I think both teams have a lot to be proud of, and both teams have a really promising future, and so whichever team goes on is going to be a real problem for whatever team has to face them. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys being here. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and you can click join if you want exclusive content. I'm looking to make a couple more videos this week. I'm hoping, no promises, but I'm hoping. And if you're here as a Patriots fan, let Chargers fans in the comments know what we are missing. What don't we know about the Patriots? Is it the fact that Vrabel likes to pull out those trick plays in the red zone? What is it? Let me know what I didn't cover and what we're missing in this game. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate those of you who like and subscribe. And if you are watching this doubting your team, whichever your team is, just know that the AFC is wide open, and this year has been chaotic and unpredictable. Anything could happen. This is going to be an awesome playoff slate, and I am looking forward to talking to you guys after the game is done, hopefully after a Chargers victory in Foxborough.